All right, so while I've got my bike apart, well, not really apart, marginally dismantled, let's say, I'm waiting on the exhaust new muffler to come in. I've got my new link pipe down there, so got that mounted up. Just waiting for the new pipe, the muffler piece to get here so I can mount that up. And then I've got this off so I can plug in my ODB connector wherever I put that. It's around here somewhere. Plug it in the diagnostic port so I can log in with Tune ECU, and I can go ahead and do the reset of the adaptations, which is like the fuel trims and stuff, and then let it do its startup sequence and idle for 15 minutes, just to account for any minor variations in flow from the exhaust. I figured while I'm waiting on that, I would do an instructional video, something that might help people, because I've seen a lot of videos over the years that I think are bullshit. Even ones that come from like mechanics and dealerships and things, which I still think are bullshit. So one of them is chain maintenance and care. And I saw one today. I'm not going to call them out because I'm sure they're nice guys and mean well and all that stuff. But saw one today where they were talking about how cleaning the chain, and the best way to clean it is with diesel fuel and kerosene and all this nonsense. It's like you should not be in your garage using fuel to clean your frickin' chain. They've got all these brushes and scrubby things and all kinds of crap. Apparently one of my dogs is kicking the other dog's ass. We'll go check that out in a minute. The show must go on. I got to film. They do that all the time. They're not actually hurting each other. So anyway, what we've got here is a chain. And what I found is, first of all, if you need scrub bristle brushes and degreaser, and they were showing how they remove the front sprocket area, and they're using a screwdriver to get all the grease and chunks of stuff out. That's the problem. First, we'll talk about how a chain is made and why you need to lubricate it. The way that these work, at least not on street bikes. So if you're talking about dirt bikes and off-road, they tend to not have O-rings or X-rings or Y-ring, whatever kind of rings the marketing people are coming up with today. The purpose of the rings is to trap grease. The rings themselves have grooves in them that contain a pocket of grease, and these are actually assembled inside in grease by machines so that grease gets trapped inside and keeps the grease down in the pivot points. The reason you don't see it on off-road chains is because the dirt, the sand, the gravel will chew the shit out of those, and they'll be gone in after your first ride anyway. So the only part of the chain that actually needs to be quote-unquote lubricated is down inside those O-rings. And they're sealed. They're pressed together, they're squished together with that pocket of grease, and that lubes the pivot points of the pins passing through the links. Taking the Motul chain spray and all these things you get at Cycle Gear and all this other chain wax and stuff like that, spraying shit on the outside does literally nothing for lubricating the chain. What it does do is it splatters shit all over everywhere, on your rim, on your wheel, on your swing arm, cakes up, and after a year or two, you're going to have half an inch of gunk up around the sprocket area up there that you'll be cleaning out with a screwdriver. It attracts dirt. It does literally nothing to clean your friggin' chain, and it certainly doesn't lubricate it in the one area that actually needs the damn lubrication. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of frickin' money. And people telling you to use this and swear by it, they do it because it makes them feel good. It's not actually doing anything. The best way to keep your chain clean is to clean it frequently. And you don't have to sit here and scrub it. You don't need to dip it in kerosene and diesel fuel and all kinds of other nonsense. This is what you need to do. Get a rubber glove. They're not just for getting your prostate examined. Put on a rubber glove. Get yourself a rag. Take the rag, spray some WD-40 on it. Spray it liberally on the rag itself. Get a spot right in the middle that's kind of saturated with it, like so. You don't want to spray it on the chain. The reason you don't want to use kerosene and solvents and things is because if it does seep past the O-rings, what you're going to see is it will actually get rid of the grease, break it apart. It's a solvent. That's what diesel fuel is. It's a mild solvent. It will get down in those areas and it will get rid of the grease. From the one part of the chain, you actually want to keep the grease. Wipe the chain down. All you need to do is just clean it. Take it with the rag, wipe it down. You're getting any excess grease off the surface, so stuff that might make its way out, especially if the chain is new. Always wipe the chain down because that wax is going to get everywhere, including on your freaking tire. And just clean the chain. All you need to do is you want to keep the surface rust off. You want to have any dirt, grit, anything that's accumulating on the outside of the chain, and you just need to get rid of that. As you feel it starting to grab more, spray a little more WD-40 on the rag, not on the chain, because then it will get everywhere and it will get down in the rings. And just clean the chain. I've had chains that have got 9,000 or 10,000 miles on them and still look largely new. Don't need a steel bristle brush. You don't need jet fuel or whatever other dumb nonsense people are putting on there. You don't need degreaser. Now, if you're the kind of person who does need those tools and those kits and stuff like that, because you're cleaning the chain once every 5,000 miles, that's the problem. You're doing it wrong. Clean the chain like this every 500 miles, or every time you ride in the rain. Come back and wipe it down with a rag with WD-40. See all that shit coming off? The chain's nice and clean, looks like it did new. Actually, it looks better than it came new, because when it was new, it was covered with white lithium grease that splattered everywhere on the ride home. And I had to spend half an hour cleaning it off of everything. That's all you have to do. The chain will last you plenty of time. The other thing is to make sure you've got enough slack in your chain. A lot of people think, oh, if I have any slack in there, it's going to, the chain's going to, pop off. It's not. You'd have to move this chain. You need at least another 2 inches of slack before you have to worry about throwing a chain. But that's all you got to do. All the grease is coming off. Chain looks good. You've got a nice little, very light film of WD-40 on there that will keep surface rust at bay, at least until you pressure wash it or clean it with anything. But you've left the grease down in the O-rings intact, and that's what you need. That's where the grease has to stay. So don't waste your time on a bunch of products. Don't sit here spraying chain wax and shit. Putting grease on the outside of something does absolutely nothing except splatter it everywhere you don't need it. That's all you got to do. Chain tension, that's what you want. When you sit on it, you think, okay, it's got a little bit of slack. You do not want a tight chain. That will wear your chain out faster. That will also put undue stress on the seals on your countershaft sprocket. It's going to be pulling it to the side. That's about as much as you want. My tuner says when you look at the chain, you should see a very slight smile. Not a sag. You don't want it flopping. But if that was sitting straight, perfect tension, that little bit of sag, that's all you need. When you sit on this compression, when you sit on the bike and you compress the suspension, that little bit of slack will tighten up a little bit. So if it's already a little bit too tight, like if I was only able to move it like that much, way too fucking tight. When I sit on it, put pressure on it, it changes the geometry slightly because the sprocket is forward of the swing arm pivot. I might then make it too tight. I'm going to wear out my teeth faster. I'm putting undue stress on the chain. I'm putting undue stress on that sprocket front countershaft seal. But that's all you need. You want maybe about 1 inch of movement. Perfect. Do that. Wipe the chain down every few hundred miles or after it rains or after you wash it, just using a simple rag. WD-40 and your chain will last you a long time. Unless you got a really powerful bike and you're romping on it and doing stuff, stretching it out. But I typically get like 10,000 miles out of a chain. Oftentimes I change it just because the sprocket's wearing out before the chain is, and then I'll go to a different sprocket. And if you go into different sprockets, I know a lot of people like to go to the lightweight aluminum sprockets. They're not any better. They're just weaker. They wear out faster. You're not saving yourself a bunch of weight. There's not a whole lot of metal here. Go with steel sprockets. There's no real advantage. I mean, if you're racing and you're worried about that last 1,000th of a second, and you think that reducing a quarter pound of rotational mass is somehow going to make the difference, that's fine because you're probably re-gearing for every track, to optimize gearing for that track anyway. Maybe that'll make a difference, but that's the best way to keep your chain clean. Maintain your sprockets. Use steel. Unless you're a racer, there's no advantage. You do that and you'll be happy.